They say you'll hear your own voice calling from the woods, never, ever answer back. I moved to my uncle's cabin in rural Oregon after the divorce. It was a last resort, a place I remembered only through the sepia-tinted haze of childhood, pine needles crunching under boots, campfire smoke clinging to my clothes, the low drone of cicadas melting into twilight. The cabin sat on the edge of a vast, whispering forest, untouched and breathing with something ancient. My uncle had disappeared 2 years ago. Left the doors unlocked, food half-cooked on the stove, TV flickering static to an empty room. No body. No note. Just gone. The locals never spoke of it directly, but their eyes grew shadowed when I mentioned his name. They'd mutter vague warnings, don't go too deep after sundown, or if you hear anything strange, ignore it. I brushed it off as backwoods superstition. I needed solitude, not ghost stories. The first few days were peaceful, eerily so. The woods had a rhythm, a breathing silence between wind and birdsong that both soothed and unsettled me. Then, around the third night, I heard it. It was just after midnight. I'd been sitting on the porch, nursing a whiskey, when I heard my own voice calling from deep in the trees. Help me. Please. I'm hurt. Can you hear me? The voice was identical to mine, not similar, not approximate, but mine. Same cadence. Same cracks in tone. The words chilled me more than the sound. It didn't sound desperate. It sounded patient. I didn't respond. I went inside, locked the door, and sat awake until sunrise. The next morning, I found strange footprints leading out from the forest and circling the cabin. Not boots. Not bare feet. Just impressions, like something lightly pressed into the soil, barely disturbing it. That night, it came again. My voice. Closer this time. I'm cold. I don't know where I am. Please say something. I turned up the volume on the radio and drowned it out, teeth clenched until sunrise bled through the trees. On the seventh night, it called out from just beyond the tree line. It didn't ask for help anymore. You used to be braver than this, it said. You used to come when someone needed you. Remember the river? Remember when your uncle fell and you ran? My chest tightened. It knew things. Things I hadn't told anyone. The river incident, that happened when I was 10. My uncle had slipped down a slope. I panicked, ran back to the cabin crying, and left him lying in the cold for hours. No one should know that. I made the mistake of mentioning it on a local forum. A user named Echo Flesh replied, if it speaks with your voice, do not respond. It is not you. It is the forest wearing your skin. I deleted the thread. That night, it was on the porch. I heard the creak of the boards. Heard my hand knock once, then again. I'm tired. Let me in. Just let me in and I'll stop calling. You're so lonely. You need me. I didn't move. I barely breathed. The next morning, claw marks raked down the cabin door, 5 parallel lines, too wide for any human hand. I packed a bag, ready to leave, but found the car shredded, tires slashed, engine ripped apart like tin. The forest was too dense to walk through without a trail, and the trail had disappeared. It was like the forest swallowed it whole. On the 10th night, it began mimicking other people. My mother. My ex-wife. My uncle. All in my voice. I heard them all outside the walls. It's okay, we forgive you. Come outside. We just want to talk. It no longer mattered who it mimicked. It had become something new, something sentient. I made the attic my last refuge, flashlight in one hand, crowbar in the other. I blocked the ladder, sealed the hatch. That night, it didn't speak. It laughed, my laugh. Mocking, echoing. Then silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. That was last night. The sun has not risen. There is no light on the horizon. My watch is stuck at 3:33 a.m. And now I hear it again. Whispering beneath the floorboards, inside the walls. It no longer needs the woods. It's in the house. And it's using my voice to whisper something I cannot understand. But it keeps repeating the last phrase clearly. It's your turn to call back. Rules to survive the echoing forest. 1. Never respond to a voice that sounds like yours. 2. Do not leave the cabin after sunset. 3. If it starts laughing, it already knows where you are. 4. If the sun doesn't rise, you're already part of the forest. 5. Most important, never, ever answer back. The words rang in my head like a curse as I stood frozen by the tree line. I could still hear the echo of my own voice drifting in the wind, too perfect to be human, too hollow to be mine. It called again, softly this time. Eli. Come here. I couldn't see anything in the thicket beyond the trail, just the swaying of skeletal branches and the wet rustle of leaves that sounded more like breath than wind. I backed up slowly, remembering what Dad told me once when we came camping here as kids, that the woods remember who listens. And worse, who speaks. By the time I got back to the cabin, the lamps inside were flickering, dancing like fireflies about to die. My brother Jonah sat on the couch, his skin pale and waxy, sweat matting his hair to his forehead. He stared at the door as if waiting for someone. "You heard it too, didn't you?" he croaked. His voice cracked like dry wood. I nodded. He looked older suddenly, the fear aged him in seconds. "It's getting smarter," he whispered. "It spoke in Mom's voice yesterday. Now it's you." That night, we didn't sleep. Every hour, we heard it circling the cabin, whispering in different voices, familiar, then strange, then familiar again. At one point, it started knocking gently on the windows, always in threes. Tap. 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 Then silence. Then the soft crunching of leaves as it moved to the next window. Jonah cried quietly, curled up on the floor, clutching a rosary he'd never used before. I sat by the fireplace, axe in hand, not sure what good it would do. At 3:12 a.m., the whispers stopped. For the first time all night, silence crept in, thick, smothering. The kind of silence that you feel pressing against your skull. Then the back door creaked open. It wasn't locked. We both turned to look, but no one was there. Just the open black square of night, gaping like a wound. And from the edge of the trees came a figure. At first I thought it was me, it looked like me. But wrong. Its eyes were too wide, the smile too long. It moved like something learning to walk on borrowed bones. It called out, "Jonah. I'm with Eli. Come on, we have to go." Jonah whimpered and stood up like he was sleepwalking. I lunged to stop him, yelling his name, but it was too late. He stepped through the door, barefoot, into the dark. The thing that looked like me took his hand. Then they both turned and walked back into the trees. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. When the sun came up, I found Jonah's shoes by the back door, muddy and wet. The trail in the forest had vanished. Not overgrown, vanished. As if the woods had never been disturbed at all. That was 3 days ago. Now every night, I hear him calling to me. "Eli. It's Jonah. Come on, man. Don't leave me out here. I'm scared." And sometimes, I hear my own voice calling back. Only I'm not speaking. The last time it called, it didn't ask me to come. It said, "I'm inside now." I turned around slowly. The door behind me was still shut. But the attic door, the one we never opened, was hanging ajar. Dust rained softly from above. A single creak echoed from upstairs. Then another. Then silence. I didn't sleep that night either. Now I write this with my back to the wall, all the lights on, knowing it's not enough. Knowing it remembers. It wears our voices like masks. It wants to be familiar so we let it in. And if you hear your own voice calling from the woods, no matter how desperate it sounds, no matter how much it begs, never, ever answer back. Because once you do, it's already inside. The voice hadn't stopped. Even after I fled the woods, back to the relative safety of my grandfather's old farmhouse, it followed. I heard it from the shadows of the trees outside, from the darkness beneath the porch, from the stillness between thunderclaps. It would whisper my name in that same broken echo of my own voice, drawn out like it was unraveling from an old cassette tape. The first night back, I bolted every door and window. Nailed them shut. Hung crucifixes on the walls like Grandpa used to, even though he'd never been religious. I poured salt across the doorways and windowsills. I stayed awake, flashlight in hand, the beam trembling with my grip. It never entered the house that first night. But I heard it breathing. Not loudly, never loud. The thing knew restraint. Its strength was patience. By the second night, it was in the walls. The voice didn't come from the woods anymore. It whispered through the floorboards, behind the plaster. Sometimes from the ceiling. I'd plug my ears until they hurt, humming, sobbing, trying to drown it out. But I couldn't block it entirely. Every so often, a syllable would slip through. A laugh. A snarl that turned into my mother's voice. Or my brother's. Or worse, my own, crying for help. That's when I realized it was learning. It wasn't just mimicking. It was remembering. Every tone, every inflection, every childhood stammer or cracked laugh. I'd hear my third-grade voice one minute, my drunk college self the next. Like it was flipping through a radio dial of every moment I'd ever spoken. Searching for the right one. The one that would make me answer. I moved to the bedroom closet and stayed there with nothing but a bat and a bottle of water. I marked the walls with tally scratches for every time it said my name. The wood is covered now. I stopped counting when the markings reached the floor. Then came the knocking. At first, it was at the front door. Then the back. Then the closet. Always 3 times. Never more, never less. I didn't respond. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Then the voice would start again. Sometimes weeping, sometimes laughing, sometimes pleading. But always in my voice. I tried calling someone, anyone, but the calls wouldn't go through. The signal bars were full, yet no connection ever formed. Messages stayed unsent. The battery lasted far longer than it should have, like time itself was distorted in the house. Like the thing was playing with the rules. One morning, I tried to leave. I opened the front door. And found another me standing on the porch. He looked exactly like I did. Same clothes. Same scar under the left eye. But the smile was wrong. Too wide. Too still. The teeth were just a little too clean. And the eyes, God, the eyes. No light. No life. He raised his hand, not in greeting. But in mirroring. I closed the door and didn't open it again. I began to understand what Grandpa meant when he said the woods were old, older than maps, older than names. He used to mutter about voices and doppelgangers, about echo spirits and soul parasites. I thought it was dementia. But maybe he knew. Maybe that's why he never answered the phone near the window. Why he'd sleep in the root cellar. Why his last journal entry was just a single phrase written over and over in shaking handwriting. Don't trust the voice with your face. It started scratching now. Every night, around 2:13 a.m. First on the walls. Then the floor. Then inside my head. Not metaphorically. Inside. A pressure behind my ears, a tapping at the base of my skull. Like a worm trying to burrow in through the sound of my own thoughts. I can feel it sometimes, like a second breath inside my mouth when I'm not inhaling. A warmth on the back of my neck when I'm alone. And then one night. It stopped. The voice. The knocks. The scratching. Everything. The silence was worse. That night, I almost answered. Just to break the stillness. Just to feel real again. But I didn't. I stayed curled in the closet until the sunlight leaked in through the slats. That was weeks ago. Now, I keep every light on. I don't sleep. I don't speak unless necessary. Because I realized something. The voice doesn't need the woods anymore. It followed me into town. Sometimes I hear it in alleyways. Sometimes it walks past my apartment building, humming my childhood lullaby. And last night, my neighbor knocked 3 times. When I opened the door, she was crying. I heard you screaming last night, she said, wiping her eyes. I called the cops, but no one answered. Are you okay? I hadn't made a sound. I asked her what she heard exactly. She frowned. It was your voice. Over and over. Begging. Pleading. Telling me not to open the door. She looked at me again. More carefully this time. Her face paled. Her jaw trembled like she was about to say something else, ask a question she was afraid of knowing the answer to. Instead, she whispered, I'm sorry if I woke you. Then turned and walked away. But before she shut her door, I heard her murmuring to herself. But he didn't have any reflection. I checked the mirror after that. I wish I hadn't. It wasn't me looking back. And now it's smiling.